Good morning, good morning, good morning, good people. Today is Monday, September 29th, 2025. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning here out in the West, in Nevada, in rural-ish, sort of, but not really, Nevada, where we are west of Sin City, east of Death Valley, south of Area 51. Hard scrabble country. People with sharp elbows, pistol packing, rootin' tootin' people. You can always tell somebody from here, you just can't tell them much. So the best place to be when you're trying to understand human nature. Because when you're in paradise and everybody's happy, not a lot you can do. But when you're in hard scrabble territory and people are fighting over every last scrap, yeah, now there's opportunity. Okay, so that's where we are, and happy to be here this morning. And I'm also happy to be here because this is my favorite week 4 in our state Penn workbook, as opposed to Penn State workbook. So this is a workbook. It's not a workbook. It's a book of work. 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day. Where can I put this? 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. Heavy stuff. And really the only time you can do it is if you are in the state pen. Maybe federal pen too. And it's a neuroscience approach. What does that mean? That means it's not a psychological approach. It's a neuroscience approach. It's what's actually happening in your brain on a cellular level. Because things happen way deeper than on the psychological or the unconscious level. They happen on a subcellular level if you're talking about neurotransmitters. Right. So that's how we look at the neuroscience-oriented approach. What do external things or internal thoughts, what do they do? What interactions do they cause amongst and between neurons in our brain? And then when those neurotransmitters and hormones get released, neurotransmitters get released, and hormones get released into the bloodstream, how does that make us feel? And then how do those feelings affect our behavior, and how does our behavior affect the outcome, and how does the outcome affect our belief? There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm very happy this is week 4, and I'm happy because our program builds on each previous week. Now you can also start at any week. You could start at week 4 and get it, but you don't get how it built. So then when you go back to week 1, it's, oh, okay, I'm starting to, now by the end of week 3, if you start with week 4, by the end of week 3, you got it. If you, same thing, start week 3. If you start at the beginning of week 3, you do week 3, then you do week 4, then you go to week 1. Okay, so anyway, it's like a merry-go-round. So it's very tight and something we've been honing for more than 10 years. So it better be tight by now, or else take us out back and shoot us. Okay, well, probably not that, but anyway, so I'm very happy this is week 4 because it built on the other one, but I'm also happy because of the content of week 4, starting with Professor Nancy Kane at Harvard, who's been a very big supporter of our program, especially the women, for over 10 years. And for our people, she nails it. She just nails it. And then tomorrow, Michael Sugra nails it. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Ignatius of Loyola and Stoicism. So this is a really great week. It all builds one on another. And Matt is here, so that's good. Now, week 4, what's it about? Well, we call it leadership. That's a polite way of saying power. Power is value neutral. It's like a hammer. It's like money. You don't put a negative connotation on power or, oh, good power. You don't put that on it. Power is what power does. A hammer is what a hammer does. A hammer can be used to make things and it can be used to break things. The hammer is just a tool. Money is just a tool. Money just enables us to experience more. That's it. Power is getting other people to do what you want. That's it. Now, there's a spectrum of power. Positive and negative. Well, I should do it this way. Positive and negative, because for me, negative numbers are over here. Positive, negative. And we only focus on the positive side. The negative side is manipulation, intimidation, coercion, force, all negative ways to get people to do what you want. Put a gun at their head. Okay, we don't do that for many reasons, but the most important one is it's just not the amount of energy it takes to get people to do what you want. Doing it this way becomes exponentially, well, it becomes much, much harder, to the point of if you're going to force people to do something, you kind of have to put them inside of a confined space and not let them out, i.e. a prison or a jail. And the cost of keeping people in a prison or jail gets really expensive, versus on the other end of the spectrum is self-motivation. You give people a book and say, this is a book of sacred writings. And if you do what it says, you will have this tremendous reward for doing it. And ultimately there, you want people to do all of the work themselves, and not only for themselves, but go get other people to do the same thing. That takes virtually no energy. And it spreads very well. So the best example of that is religion, right? The creators of all of these religions are long gone, but their ideas keep getting spread by people who believe it. Way better if it's a prison situation, the second you stop paying people to be there, the second you stop paying for food, for utilities, for things like that, the second you do that, poof, it's over. Gets destroyed in one day. When people are self-motivated, when they wind themselves up, it's almost impossible to extinguish every last one. It gets very hard. So even throughout history, where there were heretics that had a sect, a cult, it's very stamping out every last member of the cult. And even if you do, if there's something left behind, something in the memory of someone who wasn't a participant, but they knew about him, and maybe they found one of these sacred texts, it could spring up again, kind of like a wildfire, like an ember blown in the wind. That's our focus this week. Why? Because if you're going to go on the adventure of your life, you need people to help you on that adventure. Not much of an adventure if you're doing it alone. Well, it could be a really high emotionally packed adventure if you're doing it on your own, but the emotions are displaced. Like if you're sleeping out alone outside, yes, high emotions, but they're misplaced. They're not really positively experiencing life. It's negatively experiencing life because we can't do better. Okay, so we care about this week getting other people to do what we want because we want to have a great adventure, a remarkable adventure, and to do that we need other people to help us. But if we act in a way that does not attract people or that repels people, we're not going to get there. So the choice is yours. Attract people to help you on your journey through this life, or go it alone and kind of live in the shallows, as it says in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. The tide, when the tide is in, you can go a long way. The waves will bring you a great distance. When the tide is out and you're in the shallows, it's not really, I shouldn't even put it that way. It's totally not really good. It's bad. Life is spent miring in the muck. So you can choose to attract people to help you get things done. Yes, last week we learned about people, other people outside my school size team now, and how to attract them. Now that we have them attracted, let's move forward. Keep them on the ship, not have a mutiny, not change course, not get lost, not crash the ship. Forward on the voyage, forward on the adventure, forward on the journey. Okay, so that's our introduction. Our theme of today, crisis leadership. That's what Nancy Kane is going to talk about. Fantastic stuff. We've still got about a couple dozen copies of the book, her book. It's not called Crisis Leadership. Maybe I'll bring a copy in tomorrow. We've still got copies of her book. It really lays it out. Her TED Talk today talks about Lincoln and Shackleton, 2 of the 5 people in her book. A great primer on crisis leadership. That's when everything is going bad. When you're the president of the country, when there's a civil war going on, you want to keep it together, but none of the people on your team wants to help you because you're a country bumpkin. You're a nobody. You just got lucky. You were running against 3 Democrats and you won. Surprise. You're president. And nobody thought you could do it. So you were determined to make something happen because your father, when you were a kid, said, we're hard scrabble people. You don't need to read. You don't need to learn anything. You will be nothing like me. We're nobodies. We're just living off the land. And Lincoln said, I refuse to be that guy. I am not going to have my life have no meaning. So when the Civil War is thrust upon him, and it's like, yeah, you're going to be that loser guy that your dad said you would. It's like, no, I will do everything in my power, all of the things I can do, anything that's possible that I can do, I will do that because I am not going to be that guy. Classic Jordan Peterson. Here's the goal, but here's what's chasing me. And what's chasing me is my dad telling me we are nobodies. Ugh. Right. That's what propelled Lincoln, and that's what kept the Union together, etc. Oh, interesting tidbit I heard on Nancy Kane's thing. So a lot of Blacks are not big on the 4th of July, on the concept of the 4th of July. And now with this Juneteenth movement, they would rather do Juneteenth than 4th of July, thinking it was a white man's thing. Well, so I would say your history of Black America is incomplete. And you can fact check this easily with ChatGPT. Once Lincoln gave the Emancipation Proclamation, and he had the idea well before that, he had it written out well before that, they're just waiting for a Union victory. They needed a Union, they wanted to announce it after a Union victory. In other words, like the tide of the war has changed. The Emancipation Proclamation. And one of the things that really got the momentum started to be going was after Lincoln announced the emancipation of the slaves, the enlistment of blacks, free blacks in the North skyrocketed. Why? Now they had something in the game. And so it's kind of denigrating to the free black Americans at the time of the Civil War, this big movement. I mean, it wasn't really big in terms of numbers, but it was big in terms of percentage. This material number of free blacks in the North decided to fight for their brothers in the South. That is worth noting. That is worth considering when you're denigrating President Lincoln or his efforts. Anywho, advice from an 80-year-old. Don't burn bridges. You'll be surprised how many times you have to cross the same river. Right, don't burn bridges. Seth Godin, what does Seth have to say today? Acceleration is felt, velocity is ignored. On an airplane, we notice even tiny changes in acceleration, including direction, but we're completely unaware that we're traveling at hundreds of miles an hour. Compared to what is the unstated question that we ask ourselves all the time? The it's hot in here. Compared to what? I'm hungry. Compared to what? Consumers, employees, and peers are unlikely to think about what's already a given. It's the changes we notice. Right. Okay. Velocity is the speed at which you're traveling. Acceleration is when you increase. So we notice increases, but we're completely oblivious to velocity. It's the change we notice. Okay, so that he's just stating a fact. We notice the change. All right, so let's see. Time is racing. Crisis leadership. All right, let's talk a little bit about that. So in this video from Nancy Kane, which is about 18 minutes, she lays out what she calls breadcrumbs, little rules. And there's about 11 of them, but she is doing this thing as a presentation, so she misnumbers. No big deal. But for people who are precise in writing things down, what's your number 8? Because she already said 7 twice. And okay, so it's an orientation towards the world. It's the idea that everything is falling apart. How do you continue to lead when everybody is losing their mind and blaming it on you, as Rudyard Kipling said in the poem If. And Nancy Kane gives 2 great examples. One is Lincoln while he's president. 2 is Shackleton. And things people don't know about Lincoln is he threatened to commit suicide twice because things were going badly. His father had told him, "You're nobody." This is when he was a kid, not as an adult. We are nobody. Don't get ahead of yourselves. We're hardscrabble people. And he was committed to having that not be true. So the Union was dividing. There was this concept of history. In the future, how will we be judged? I don't want to be judged as the guy that let the Union fall apart. This beautiful idea of a democratic republic. I don't want to be the guy who was president when that happened. So tremendous ambition to do it. The world is my classroom is a breadcrumb. Looking at things from different angles. How does it look from here? How does it look from there? Being able to do that. Being able to forbear acting. The Union, the West Point brass was not in sync with Lincoln. They had their own agenda. And so he couldn't get them to act to do what he wanted. And for them, he was a country bumpkin. So one of the things he did is he had a telegraph machine put in the White House so he could get the dispatches also directly from the front. He was very involved in the war effort because the Union generals would not act. And many of the generals in the South were West Point graduates. So, like Robert E. Lee. So there was a reluctance to do what it was needed to be done until Lincoln got Sherman and Grant to just basically go for total war. Anyway, how to lead during crisis. We'll talk a little bit more about it tomorrow. Tomorrow is the opposite. So this was crisis leadership. Tomorrow is pure leadership. Everything's going bad. Everything is perfect. All right. That we're going to say and cut, and cut, and cut.